G'day everyone. Happy New Year. Sorry I didn't get on over the break. I actually had a decent break. Um, I'm Rangadad. This is not financial advice. This is just the way I'm looking at the market. And yeah, I figured there was nothing super important or super different to what I went through on the last video before my break. So there wasn't much point in coming on while I was on holidays. But we are starting to see some interesting movement in few indicators. So um, it's worthwhile paying attention at the moment, I think. Um, Still a little concerning that global liquidity is still heading to the downside. Now, this is affected. It is a ratio between sort of the Chinese 10-year bonds, US dollar, um, and just a whole range of sort of central bank assets and things. But so it could be affected by the Dixie going up as hard as it is, but it's still something that's been a pretty good predictor of pretty decent downturns. So that's something to still keep in mind, and it kind of plays in with a potential downside move that was flagged by Eric Crown as well over the past couple of days. Yeah, he was looking at it more from stats on when the high was for Bitcoin in January. And so he's basically said, okay, further pullback to find a low in the next week or so would be bullish, but a push up to find the high for January in the next 7 days or so would actually be quite bearish. Now, interestingly, Bitcoin's just finished its second bullish year. If we go, we'll just have a look at the yearly. So let's go to the index. So typically, Bitcoin, after two green Januaries in a row, will actually have a red January. That's been the case over the last few cycles. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean anything now, but it's worth noting that we typically only get sort of 3 years up in a row, and yeah, what this is suggesting is we do actually have another green year ahead. A little skeptical of that, just given the global outlook, the macro outlook, but that's probably a fairly bullish sign. But you'll also see that in that third year there tends to be a high and it pulls back. The start of the pullback actually happens within this year. Okay? So we'll still be looking for a macro high this year, obviously. It's just a matter of when. Come back to the daily. So what did I want to cover here? Defended the value area low pretty well and the 50 EMA. So in general, a bounce off the 50 EMA is a really good thing. The advanced decline line on the S&P 500 has at least flattened off. I'm kind of expecting this to actually start to jump next week, which would actually suggest a continuation of this pump. Now, the concerning thing is what's going to happen around these levels. So the value area high at the moment, based on the 40% width, 40% of the volume, is sitting at about 99k, just below the previous highs, last lower high. If we turn around, if we don't make a newer high here, then I would actually expect at least a sideways January, but probably a down January. Which, considering we started 93, doesn't have to come down too much below where we're at now to actually be a negative January. So I guess the issue is, if we bounce here, stochastic momentum is crossing to the upside. It's not out of that bearish control zone yet. BBWP is flattening off, so hopefully ticking up soon. Problem is, we've left a really big wick here on 31st of December. And if this is just a wick recovery, then it could actually pull back from the point of control here. Still got vector candle up here, which is sort of, I guess, a potential target. It's just right now, with global liquidity on to the downside, it's not looking super likely to get up here, but I guess the key point here is where we're at now isn't a bad short-term level to buy in. I still have my full portfolio in, but I'll be watching pretty closely if we can clear this point of control as to where it's going to stop. I'll actually be looking to sell it again, probably once stochastic momentum gets up into this bullish control zone. All right. That's kind of where I'm at macro for Bitcoin at the moment. I'll just have a quick look at the monthly. Pretty nasty candle on the monthly there. We are a long way away from the 20 moving average on the monthly. Have a quick look at 5. We are a fair way away from the 5 as well. And typically it does, as Crown points out, it does like to at least reconnect with the 5 moving average after a little bit. And it can be an inter-month reconnection there. Where's that at the moment? So somewhere around 86, 85 and a half. I actually think that if January ends up green, this 5 moving average is actually going to become a little bit higher. It's probably going to be up around the 88 anyway. So 88k is still kind of on the radar. Well, it is definitely on my radar. There's a couple of things which I'll touch on in a second, which are suggesting that it's not necessarily going to happen. Not in the next few days anyway, by the look of it. Anything else on the monthly? Not really. I mean, the global liquidity, as you can see, is still dropping. Monthly has crossed below the signal line on stochastic momentum. BBWP is resetting as well. So it's not a big deal on the monthly. It's not something I really look for. a big green candle like this with a tick of BBWP above the moving average would be a pretty good sign. As you can see, that does happen in the bullish control zone on the monthly, but yeah, it's typically the monthly is lagging so much. It's a tricky one to use. But yeah, proper breakouts tend to happen when BBWP just ticks above the monthly signal line and you're getting into the bullish control zone on stochastic momentum. So it'd be nice to have a tick up in BBWP while we're in this zone again. But we'll probably have to wait till the end of the month to see that happen, I'd say. And it could very well happen. But all right, have a look at the weekly as well. Weekly is not looking great. Still in the bullish control zone. Weekly can, I guess, turn around pretty quickly after coming out of the control zone on bullish control zone on the stochastic momentum. We are at a fairly high level though. To me, it looks more like April this year than it does, this area here, which was December last year. Could be wrong on that. Until the weekly's sort of out of that bullish control zone, not too concerned. But we have had 2 down weeks in a row. Just don't really want to have 4 down weeks in a row like we did back in April last year. Hopefully it is more like a bottoming period, sort of. Yeah, same thing happened last January. We did have a bit of a spike up start of January, second week of January last year, but then it did pull back into the end of January and then bounce from there. So that is very much on the cards at the moment. And high to low in January last year was on the weeklies 21%. Yeah, it's kind of looking more like that is potentially the case, but I think shorter time frames are going to be where I'm focusing my attention, definitely on the daily. All right, 80k. If we do slip below 80k, is certainly something to watch out for, and that could be a target at some stage in January, maybe towards more the end of January. It's just if we break below this region, it's just a matter of whether it's going to be like a swipe of, like if the move down is just a swipe of these lows to get the liquidity that sits under there, or if it's a bigger drop, we get a cascade event, it could come back into that 80 level. 200 EMA is going to be coming up close to that in a few weeks, so it's very much something to, like, a level to be watching out for as well. But as you can see, the 100 EMA is coming up to about 86 at the moment. So at this stage, that would hold this region, I guess, that we started to form on this purple vector here. So yeah, it's sort of, that's kind of still what we're interested in there. It's just whether or not it gets back into that green box. This stage, it's holding everything quite well though. Probably the biggest indicator that we may be starting to to find a base here is the cumulative volume delta is flattening off quite a lot on this one here. I think is I fucking forgot to check this, but I think this includes all the leverage, whereas this one here is just spot. And spot has finally started to really, I guess, make a longer term move to the upside on CVD, while price has kind of been staying flat. Slight uptick in price, but fairly flat. I'd like to see both of these start to tick to the upside, but the good thing is we've actually had our first negative funding rates in a while, like decent periods of negative funding rates right at the bottom here. That's actually a reasonably bullish sign. And the big sort of bid-ask delta to the downside at the top here didn't drag it back very much. And most of these red areas aren't lasting very long before they're being bought up. So at this stage, I might even go to the daily and see what it's like there. Again, a little tick up on the daily at the bottom here for CVD spot. Wow, that was a massive negative funding rate there. That was the FTX crash. Yeah, look, it seems like things are starting to get caught up. Open interest is flattening off. I want to see a little bit of a tick up in that, which we kind of have, but it's looking like we could be finding a bit of a base. That's all. We go into the liquidation levels. Realistically, there is some liquidity around the 90k mark, down into sort of 88, picks up most of this liquidity. Then there's a bit of a gap, and that gap's actually even wider on Binance. I won't do it because it resets my chart to the daily, but to get back down into the low, even 86, there is a bit of a gap there, so it could happen quite quickly if it does. It's just whether it wants to keep coming. Like getting down into 80s, there just isn't. It doesn't look like there's a huge amount down here. Now, we've got to take into consideration that this liquidity here that was taken was 770 million. So that's pretty massive levels, and we still do have 324 million down at 86, and getting up to the high 300 millions down around the 89, 90s. So there is still good liquidity there, but at this stage, it might just be a sweep of that level. I'm still leaning towards it just being a sweep of this wick and all the longs that have their stop losses below that level. And then that would actually draw in all the people that are saying that this is a head and shoulders, which they're right. It looks like a head and shoulders. So it depends where you draw the shoulder, but basically, that does look like a head and shoulder. We have not confirmed below that, and I suspect that if we do come below that, I'd be kind of surprised if it actually plays that out. It would bring us down to the 80k mark. That would be a pretty decent measured move there. Probably somewhere there. So yeah, that would definitely pick up that 80k level. It's just at the moment, the underlying signs are that this could be a fake out. If it does pull back and actually break this low here, I suspect it's going to be a fake out. I don't think this will play out as a head and shoulders at this stage. All right. The caveat to all this too, we have had a decent uptick on BTC longs over the last week. That's a really good sign that we're starting to get close to a bottom. But it's it is a bit iffy here because, is this typically they're buying on the way down, and I guess the sell-offs were slowing down quite a bit. There would have been some people increasing their longs as other people were decreasing. But typically if this is still going, you don't normally find that to be the bottom. Like normally they're buying on the way down. So if we look, let's say 5 days into this one, it was actually finding a bottom, and then it spiked a little bit, but then came back again. So, and typically that's kind of what happens. As you can see here, they're buying as this is coming down. That is a decent pump though. Like, yeah, just trying to find something that might be similar. I mean, they did only start in earnest right at the bottom here, and they can keep buying as it moves up. So, yeah, it's kind of iffy on this one. But I guess the good news is that they have started buying again. So I'm not expecting any major crash here. But BTC longs has reset to a level that's, pretty well started this range here, the range low that we were in previously. So hope we don't range for a couple of months. That'd be boring AF, but not going to rule that out either. Whoa, what was I doing there? I'm going to ignore that. Okay, let's have a quick look at the rest of the market. It's a reasonable support level here for NASDAQ. Not seeing huge signs of a turnaround, but it has picked up this vector candle here. We've had some portfolio rebalancing as well, so it could actually be that start of January people will start to buy back in. Just, yeah, it would be a reasonable spot to actually bounce from. Momentum's not giving me that much hope that this will actually bounce from here, though. It's looking more like a dead cat bounce. Kind of want to see momentum switch to the upside pretty quickly and BBWP to actually stay to the upside. But yeah, look, global liquidities seems to be dragging this down still at the moment. Where was the target on this? What do we add? We had 5%, so bring it down to 10%. That'd be a pretty good area to bring it into, about 20,000. So it could actually be a down January into the inauguration and then pump after that, which is opposite to what we thought it would based on history. But again, another head and shoulders on the S&P here. these are actually looking more like playing out, and if they do play out, then yeah, Bitcoin's probably going to play out its as well. Yeah, not looking great, but this could shift really quickly. Advanced decline line, as I said, is sort of it's flattening off, and typically as it flattens off, it will pick up again. From there, it's just like we can have some pretty decent flat areas where price actually increases too. You typically don't see it dropping much when you do have a flat price, though. A flat advanced decline line, I mean. Yeah, we did have quite a few distribution days up here leading into that drop. So I guess what's the call here? Right now, everything's suggesting that maybe a little bit more down. And I think if it does find a base, in around 58, to be honest, yeah, even 58.20 as a base, that would fake a lot of people out with the head and shoulders. Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. 5800, pick up the rest of this vector candle here, tidy up this wick, and then move to the upside. The only issue is the next big target to the downside is probably this gap fill here, 5600. That really needs to be on there. And then there's actually like this vector candle here as well is a pretty good target at 5500. You'd probably go a bit lower than that into the wick, but I think 5640 would pick up that 200 EMA on the daily as well, which weekly 20 is normally a pretty good level. So the weekly 20 is sitting at about 5860. So yeah, look, 5800, 5850 is still on the cards here. It's not often we let a weekly vector candle go for very long without recovering it, except for this one. That'll be a target for later in the year, I think. But yeah, there is obviously the potential that we've actually seen the top in this market. We may not actually get a new all-time high this year. Do I think that's the case? No, I think there's going to be all sorts of movement after Trump gets in. There'll be big swings in both directions, but for the time being, a little bit more of a pullback. Looks like it's on the cards, and then a move up. IWM actually looks like it's finding a bit of a base here. In stochastic momentum, I'd love to see this get out of the bearish control zone. Volatility is still quite high on this one. But yeah, this is a pretty good level for IWM to go for a run. And it's got lots of targets above. There's some decent vector candle targets up above. What you don't want to see is it turning around, making a lower high here. I wouldn't count this as a lower high yet. So industrials is an interesting one, and the reason why is back over here. So industrials has been dropping for basically a month and a bit. It's had some pretty decent buys at these lows. this is kind of an indication that the stock market may have a decent bounce here as well. It certainly hasn't dropped further than this. Need to kind of reclaim these levels here. I think sort of the 135 level, I think that is. What's that? Show me. Yeah, 134.60. If it reclaims that level, then it would suggest the market's probably going to go on a decent run. Just because there's so much volume it's been traded in here, we need to kind of clear that to really be confident that things are going up. But generally, the buying around this level, like that buy there, that's probably a buy. It's still meeting some selling demand though, so yeah, really need to clear that level. Until then, industrials are still not looking that great. The other thing too, we haven't seen a huge amount of interest in Coinbase, the 2x long. There is a few trades here, but nothing compared to the selling that was going on up here. Okay, lots of taking profit up in that region. You kind of want to see a bit more action down in this area, I think, which, this Coinbase itself has been getting some buying on the lows, some sells at the highs as well. So a little bit of people taking profit on the bounces, I think. But there is also people buying in on these dips. So I'd be surprised if these are all take profits as well, but could be wrong. So XLY has reached a critical level as well. So consumer discretionary. The issue is, like, there has been some smaller buys in here. They're not showing up in the top 10 largest trades in the last month. But there has been a couple. So it needs to find some support here. A little bit disappointing we haven't seen more action like this, which suggests that the market isn't convinced yet that the economy is worth buying into. Now, credit card debt is still going up, which, as long as that's still going up, then that's actually a bullish sign. Once that starts to roll over, that's actually when it turns bearish. So, yeah, even XLK. So technology is getting a little bit of a bid here, which is good. Yeah, you kind of want to see this bounce reasonably soon. Could it sweep down here? Yeah, it could, but the fact it seems to be getting some interest in here is pretty bullish. Metals and mining, this is a good sign. I like to see this at the lows. We haven't really dropped significantly lower than these, so I think metals and mining is probably going to be a good one to be in over the next few months. It has had a pretty decent drop on it. Similar with XLP. So XLP is maybe starting to get a little bit of an interest here. Again, you kind of want to see this move to the upside with another decent buy in here. Just have a look at the 20th largest. See if there's some more interest in there. Yeah, okay. Bit of a sweep there. So typically a sweep is someone really looking to get in or out quickly. So that's a good sign, I think. Hard to tell, but at the bottom of a decent sell-off, that's not bad. Yeah, we've done industrials. So energy, good buying around there. We were on top of that, and that was at the same time as the oil chart actually getting a decent break of this trend line, and then never went back below that trend line. So that's a really good base to come off there. Broken out above the value area high there as well. So I do expect oil to keep going. At least it'll probably get a bit of resistance around 73, I think. But honestly, I'd expect it to get up to 75.5 at least, close that gap there. That's actually a bullish sign for the economy in general, long term. Just go back here and make sure I've done everything I wanted to do. Not sure CoinEx showing me what I really want. Oh, this is Sol. Hang on. All right, here we go. Pretty good basing signal there. On both as well. So the perps and the spot. Yeah, that's not a bad sign. Still plenty of orders below, not a huge amount above. I'd like to see a bit more above, to be honest. Yeah, that's actually looking really thin. It looks like there's been a few orders pulled actually, because we did have quite a few around the 110. I guess they are still at the 110 mark, and then the 120 as well. Oh, they're still in there. That's not too bad. They've been in there for a while. Since the start of November. Kind of want to see them still in there. But yeah, not a huge amount of orders to the upside, which is a little bearish. And to be honest with you, it's not looking like there's much to go into up above 100k. So that's going to be a key level to look at, which is around the value area high at the moment as well. Open interest is actually dropping as we're pumping at the moment as well. That's not a great sign. But it's still well above where it was around this bottoming signal. So expect like a little pullback here, but then more upside would actually be still on the cards. It is putting in sort of some higher lows on the smaller time frames as well. Have a quick look on the hourly. Yeah, so we are putting in higher lows on the hourly. Just going to have a quick look at the shorter term open interest. So this is a little concerning, I guess. There's a fair bit of open interest. Sorry, fair bit of liquidation levels back down into the 92,500. Yeah, I mean, might come back into here first and then sweep up and grab up into the 96 level. Still going to be choppy, I think. Fair chunk down here at 91 as well. Yeah, this area here is kind of concerning, I guess. Just given there's not a hell of a lot of liquidity. And the BTC longs are still increasing. I'm kind of thinking that we may actually come back into this area. it's funnily enough, it's kind of um, fairly well balanced at the moment. Yeah, back into 92 would pick up most of the 100x leverage on Binance. There is quite a few shorts to take if it wants to go. That's actually, yeah, looking at that, I'm really not expecting anything much further down than 88. Even 89 might pull it up. Yeah, you got. Yeah, liquidation levels are seemingly growing quite a lot to the upside, so it's fairly balanced, but there are a few things suggesting that we might be pretty close to the bottom. TLT has had quite significant um, dark pool activity down here as well. Now, it's still obviously in the bearish control zone. Kind of expecting a bounce here, but whether we actually find another lower high will be interesting. Certainly the US 2-year and 10-year are pulling back a little. Looks like a double top forming on the 2-year. Not so much on the 10-year, but you would expect 10-year to pull back into this level and probably go again. If it breaks that trend line there, which is a pretty significant trend line, then TLT will go on a pretty decent run. But the 2-year, I don't know, 2 years been a bit funny here. I don't think we'll get back up into here. Uh, 2 years looking more like it's going to do a double top. That was a lower high as well. So pull down, potentially back up into this sort of level, and then a run to the downside. Could be on the cards. It just depends what the economy is looking like too. High yield junk is bouncing a little bit. That's not a bad thing. You'd kind of want to bring it back up into these levels, 79s. Again, whether it makes a new all-time high or not, I doubt it. Did come back down very close to this this trend line here, which it could actually roll over again, come back into that, and then move up. That would be a bullish sign for the markets. But at the moment, yeah, most of the bond indicators are actually technically still bearish. Which again would suggest a little bit further down before we actually have a bounce, which is probably going to drag Bitcoin with it. Japanese market's holding pretty well. UK markets looks like a decent bounce there as well. Japanese market may break down from here though. Needs a strong day. I think it's probably going to come back down into the 200 EMA though. Chinese market still looking okay. You want BBWP to actually have a decent uptick though, while you've still got momentum to the upside. Certainly, it'd be hard to be bearish on that anyway. DAX, finding a bit of support as well. Yeah, it's not too bad. Semiconductors is still flat. Not much of a read on that one. Home builders looks like it's basing. There was some decent dark pool activity in this as well. So that's a good sign. Same with ITB. Had a pretty big correction on this. You don't often see them that big. KRE actually had some decent buys in this level as well. Dark pool. Didn't quite close that gap. It's a B-stick away from it, but it may actually have a little bit further downside, pick up this vector candle, close this gap here as well. But I wouldn't expect it to come much lower than that before we actually get a bounce on the markets. So generally, I feel like it's going to be a fairly choppy sort of January. Equal weight, XLY, XLP is going well. This is still very much in an uptrend. Momentum's ticked over, but probably need to see that break out of the bullish control zone before you get too worried. XLY, XLP is still high as well. In general, markets seem to be finding some pretty decent levels at the moment for a bounce, if not a little bit, just a little bit further down. So DJT, DJI are both at pretty good levels as well. You don't really want to see momentum tick to the downside here. You want to see that move back up. And yeah, VIX had a little bounce, but no real read off that at the moment. The skew's actually bounced, so that's not a bad sign. The skew hasn't been a great read through here, but I guess it's choppy and the market's pretty choppy at the moment, so it's going to be interesting. Thanks, Roger. LQDIE. The fact that we broke this trend line isn't great, as I've mentioned before. Oops. I guess the important one on this is probably going to be something like this. That's going to be your support. This is, again, another bond indicator. If it's sort of down sideways into this level, then, and look, it does look like it's going to pull back as well. That again agrees with a few more days, maybe a week down, and then a bounce. So yeah, it's hard to tell in this sort of low liquidity environment, but copper, that's a nasty level for copper actually. I mean, that's essentially a head and shoulder break right there, which suggests we may get a head and shoulder break on S&P 500. That's a big head and shoulder though, so that's looking pretty bad on copper. Oh, that'd be into some very interesting levels on copper, about $3.50. See what this trend line looks like as well. Copper may find some support soon. Probably looking more like this as a trend line on daily closes. I would say if we break that, then $3.50 is on the cards. Copper, which is not going to look good for the economy as a whole. It would suggest we're heading for that 10% correction sooner rather than later. So yeah, at the moment, it's actually looking a bit different to what I thought it was last year, in that we could actually have a down start to the year, and then a pump into the inauguration, into the end of the month. Yeah, Roger, it's going to be an interesting year to turn $300 into 1,000 with Bitcoin, but you'll be looking to buy the dips and sell the rips, I'd say, pretty quickly. Go mining USD. I don't normally do requests, but I'll have a quick look. Is that the actual ticker? I mean, it's following Bitcoin pretty closely. The issue you have here, one, it follows Bitcoin reasonably closely, but it wicked up to about the level it got to here. So typically, when you got a gigantic wick like that and you recover it, that is going to be a pullback point. So I don't necessarily think this is going to break all-time highs. If it does break the top of that wick, then it'll probably go on a pretty decent run. But yeah, in general, I mean, it's turning around here on the momentum. Not very highly traded though, this one. So I'd be pretty careful on that. Maybe just sort of accumulate over time. But yeah, once it gets out of that bearish control zone, it's probably going to go on a decent run, which would probably be a good sign for Bitcoin as well. All right, I'll just go back to silver. Silver needs to find some support here, but at this stage, it looks like a head and shoulders is playing out on silver, so it's unfortunate. Where's the target on that? Oh, yeah, probably into that $25.77, which again is not a very bullish sign for the economy. Silver tends to follow the economy more than gold. So if we look at the ratio, yeah, that's broken. That's unfortunate. This ratio is at very low levels historically. Still got a bit of support around this level, but silver probably needs to find a bit of a buy. Gold certainly. Hang on, I'll have a look at Ponky in a sec. Yeah, gold's finding a bit of support here. Kind of a hard read, but it has just ticked inside the like out of the bearish control zone for stochastic momentum. So that's not a bad sign on gold. BBWP is dropping, but in general, that's not a bad sign. upside expected on gold, whereas silver's probably going to go to the downside, which will probably rip um, that ratio to shreds. The only thing is, this was a pretty good support level. Silver just needs to hold that. If it does hold that, then fake out of that head and shoulders. It will recover this vector candle. And this vector candle here is probably actually what you're looking at as a target. Typically, these things won't leave those vector candles for very long. This one here did take a little while to recover, but it's a good sign that they are leaving vectors at the highs. If you're not leaving vectors at the highs, and chances are it's not coming back there for a while. All right, quick look at Dixie. Dixie's still breaking new all-time highs. Well, sorry, not all-time highs, but breaking local highs. Yeah, that's actually a bearish sign for the markets. So again, I think we had a target of 110. Yeah, 110 on Dixie actually seems like it should get there, which is going to cause markets to pull back in general. Aussie dollar is in the toilet. Needs to find some support soon, which I don't think it will, just based on US dollar chart, Dixie chart. Japanese yen is maybe finding a bit of support here. It's not the best level, it's not the worst, but it needs to do something soon. And again, given Dixie's breaking levels and looks like it wants 110, that's probably going to come back down as well. Euro. Yeah, I don't see this holding it, to be honest. This is the third retest of this level, effectively. Yeah, no, I think Euro's going back down to parity, which US dollar at 110 would make a lot of sense. When was the last time US dollar was at 110? 10th of November 22. Tenth of November 22. Yeah. 110 is definitely a target on US dollar. I do think it'll find resistance and pull back after that. But at the moment, these charts are looking quite bullish on Dixie and bearish on everything else, which is tricky because that does actually make it hard for the global economy because most debt is in US dollars, and repaying that debt when your local currency is up the shit can actually make it very hard for other countries. Yeah, I'd be surprised if it holds here. If it does, then great. Could just be a fake out on the Dixie, but not looking great. This thing just keeps going down, hey. Broken that level. Might have a bit of support here. If you're bullish on stocks, you really need global liquidity to start picking up. And it might. It's been on a pretty decent drop to the downside, but it needs to bounce soonish, I think. If it doesn't, any sort of rip to the upside on stocks or crypto is just going to be met with sellers, I think. Mag 7, not a great sign for the Mag 7. Again, probably leads to more downside back into 2100 on that. Yeah, momentum's getting into bearish control zone and BBWP is ticking to the upside, so that's looking much more down. generally, I've got to be bearish on these markets at the moment. Tesla's broken that level. You'd expect it to come back into 348 at least, 350. There's going to be a lot of put options around there, so it may not make that straight away, but yeah, this is looking pretty nasty. What I need to do is add that to my quick access. So could be forming an M pattern here, which would play out. It'd actually play out into this region. It wouldn't necessarily go much further than that as an M pattern, but yeah. And that would coincide with the general market down for the next little while. Nvidia, oops, Nvidia's still looking pretty bearish. Sort of lower highs. Probably needs to retest this support level again. If it bounces off that, then fantastic. If it doesn't, then you know, you're probably looking at this target in here. This trend line as being a target. Decent level in here for. Just going to put a. Yeah, there's a fair bit of confluence down around this level. I mean, while it's above the value area high there, it's bullish, I guess, but I wouldn't be bullish on this chart, to be honest. It's not. It's actually got some hidden divergence on stochastic momentum as well. So that is suggesting more downside on Nvidia, probably into the 120 mark. It's a pretty good target in there. I think it'll hold there, at least for the time being, but certainly a target. Google, I would expect this to pull back with the rest of the market. Now the hype over there, the new chip is done. Okay, yeah, that's suggesting more downside on markets. Apple's been one of the strongest performers lately, just in terms of holding its own and actually moving up. But that momentum is coming down at quite a rate out of the bullish control zone. Needs to find some support on this trend line, which could do. Been pretty strong trend line. Might even get some support off the 20 moving average, but that's, yeah. Don't know. Suggest it looks like 237 is more of a target for Apple over the next week or two. Triple M is sideways. Amazon. Yeah, Amazon I don't think is gonna go to a high from here. I think it's gonna pull back a bit more. Probably into this little trend line here. At least into the 50 EMA, which is probably going to sit around the 212 mark. But if everything's dropping further, I would expect Amazon to keep going as well. Close some of these gaps in here. There's a big gap and a vector candle down around the 186 level, but I don't think it'll get there soon. Meta. Yeah, Meta's an interesting one. Probably comes back down to this trend line still. It's in no man's land. Momentum's to the downside. I would expect further downside on that. So in general, everything's looking pretty downside over the next week. SMCI, Yeah, it's looking down as well. Another head and shoulders there would bring it back down into the 1990 level at least. Yeah, looking pretty bearish across the board, really. We got that bounce a little quicker than I thought, obviously based on those lines, but that's Aussie market's looking fairly bearish at the moment as well. Not necessarily a huge drop, but definitely that support is a target there, I think, around 7,800. That's financials, resources. Yeah, resources aren't looking great, but kind of does look like it wants to make a bit of a bounce, which kind of agrees with the mining on the US stock market. So yeah, that's one to watch out for. I have bought into that one on the dip. Have a quick look at USDT versus, stablecoins versus Bitcoin. This is a good sign that it is pulling back a little. The issue here is the 50 EMA. It needs to kind of, like, it has recovered this vector candle here. We haven't recovered that one. That, if we recover this vector candle here, then it's going to be sort of your 80K Bitcoin, I would think, which would be up around the 200 EMA, which would be a good spot for it to pull back. Not that the 200's really been much of a pullback area for it along the way. The 100 has been a better target, especially in this bull market. But look, in general, it's not a bad spot for it to come out of this bullish control zone. Be watching this one reasonably closely as well. Thing is, it's governed by Bitcoin price anyway, so it's sort of not a leading indicator by any means. Not at this point anyway. When it breaks key levels, then yeah, but at this stage, it's just suggesting that, you know, we've recovered this vector. It's not a bad spot for a bounce in Bitcoin. ETH BTC longs. That total crypto market cap is finding some support off the 50 EMA as well, which is good. That's not a bad level. Not a lot to the upside on it, to be honest, though. Like 3.5 trillion would be an interesting level. I'll just do this Ponky token thing. Ponky USDT. Jesus, they're on Bybit and Binance. Have a look on Binance. Boy, I'd be catching a falling knife at the moment. It's actually not a bad level though. Bottom of that vector. If we have a tick up in stochastic momentum here, then you do have bullish divergence on your momentum and a tick up in BBWP. That's actually not a bad level for that. So yeah, more money. That's not a bad level for Ponky token. It's just these things here, they can still get ripped a new asshole if Bitcoin drops. So what we want to see here is we want to actually see semiconductors actually move to the upside, or at least a NASDAQ move to the upside. Like if NASDAQ were to bounce here, S&P could still go down quite a bit while NASDAQ is moving up. But if we had a bounce on some of these semiconductors or technology, um, it could actually help Bitcoin bounce here as well. And quite often, Bitcoin does lead the general stock market. So it is something to keep in mind. Shorts have started to drop, but they're still relatively high too. So um, the thing with that is shorts tend to um, peak just as Bitcoin is finding its low. So um, quite often the shorts don't actually make that much money when you're looking at BTC USD shorts. But good sign that they seem to have peaked a little bit here, and they're closing them as Bitcoin is going up at the moment. So that's not a bad sign. ETH BTC is struggling a little bit, so it still looks like um, Ethereum longs is they've fuck no. What's Ethereum doing? It's not like I keep hearing stories that Ethereum's getting a lot of bids and a lot of interest and stuff. I'm not seeing a huge amount of it in the charts. I mean, to be fair, Ethereum should go up from here, just based on momentum. BBWP is resetting. We do have some decent vector candles above. So yes, Ethereum is probably going to get a decent pump. From here, that would potentially be up into 15% move, be a little bit less, maybe more. But this does look like a bit of a base for Ethereum. The problem is I'm just not seeing it in the Ethereum longs. Ethereum longs has been a weird predictor. People have been shorting it since 18th of December though. Yeah, okay. So shorts on Ethereum started going nuts right around here. They have started to close them, but they're not fully closed yet. So they're even shorting through this candle here. Yeah. Hard read on Ethereum at the moment. I think at the moment, Bitcoin's looking more bullish out of the two, but generally stocks aren't looking great. The stock market in general, there's a lot of bearish signals still in the markets. So I wouldn't be calling a turnaround yet. At this stage, to be honest with you, you actually want to see a pullback from the point of control. If you're going to be bullish on crypto into end of January, I actually want to see a pullback from 95, 600-ish. Maybe a little bit higher, but even up into 97. But I want to see a pullback in the next couple of days into a fairly quick drop, potentially into the 88K level. If we get past that, 80 is probably my next target, to be honest. Like this box is potential, but 80 still on the cards for me. So yeah, want to see a little bit of a pullback with the general stock market. That 100 level is an interesting target, 100 EMA, and then we go upwards from there. But good levels here, so Bitcoin can do, like, there's a lot of people calling for a pullback in Bitcoin, and typically that's when it will actually Just normally prefer to see a flush before a pump. You can see here a bit of sideways, looking at support, and then we get a couple of days down and then it jumps. It's kind of what I'd like to see here. Just that flush and then the pump. Didn't necessarily get it here. That was a very bullish time though. But again, you get a little flush here, good volume on the bottoming candle there, and then a pump. Kinda, it's those areas there that sort of look more like where we're at the moment. Again here, just flush pump, flush pump. Tends to be what to expect with Bitcoin. And yeah, typically there will be a little pump fake out before the final flush too. Not much there though. All right, that's what I'm looking at. Potential for a pullback soon. So just be careful if you are in longs at the moment. Looking at it on the shorter time frames is going to be pretty critical. Coming into some resistance here as well. But it's doing pretty well with recovery of the vector candles as well on the way up here. So like on Bitcoin, it's actually looking reasonably bullish. On the hourly, if the momentum starts to tick down and continues down out of this bullish control zone, then that's probably going to lead to some downside. But at the moment, you kind of need to see this turn around before you get too bearish on it. So at the moment, yeah, the point of control up here, even up into 100K, it would make sense for Bitcoin to do 100K and then pull back for mine, based on everything I've seen today. It's just it's hard because that's going against what the general market looks like it wants to do at the moment. So, all right, that'll do. That's enough blabbering. But yeah, Roger, you are 100% correct that 92K has been a very defended level. Like that, there has been a lot of volume, a lot of buying off these sort of levels, off that 90, 91, 92K. Even like 93 was heavily bought up. So yeah, the problem is we are bear flagging really. Spikes like this, generally they're a fake out. Just the quick spike, that is a fake out. The thing that makes me think this may not be a fake out, and same with the downside, like that was a good fake out. The thing at the moment is we're actually just trudging up slowly. It is obviously low liquidity. US market is closed, but it's good that we're not leaving any real decent vectors behind. It is a general slow move up, and that's kind of what you want to see when Bitcoin is bottoming. Yeah. Even these here, you tend to think, yeah, V-shaped recovery like that does revisit those levels quite often. And this was a good sweep of this low too. So it's just, we are hammering. The bounces aren't as high at the moment. So funnily enough, like you clear that 100K level, that should actually be quite bullish for Bitcoin, but again, it could just be a fake out to the upside there. It's going to be an interesting 2025 market-wise. Just this liquidity story is going to be a big one to watch, I think. Because, yeah, markets are up the shit. Well, the economies are up the shit around the world at the moment. And the bonds market's starting to sort of price that in a bit. Yeah. Alrighty. I'll catch you later. See you tomorrow.